Today's episode is about 3 ways we give away our power, and most importantly, how to take it back. So, I was at a conference this weekend, or rather, a gathering, literally called The Gathering in Santa Barbara. And I'm recording this on October 1st, 2024. It was an incredible gathering for women, and there were a lot of magical things that happened. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that the environment that was created there made people feel safe to be themselves. And when I think about the power of being ourselves, being you, all you have to do is show up as you, not with any mask on, not trying to please other people or trying to morph yourself into what you think other people want. I continue to be amazed that showing up just as yourself is the most powerful thing that we can do. And one of my favorite quotes from a gentleman I found out named Howard Thurman said, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." But so many of us are not being true to ourselves, and we're giving away our power in these moments in our communication that we don't even realize half the time. So I want to talk about 3 of those. Number 1, let's jump right in here. We downplay our strengths. Instead of celebrating and leveraging them, too often we say, oh, we either don't even acknowledge them at all, we don't take the time to celebrate, or we just ignore them and do nothing about them. We tend to say some things like, oh, that's no big deal, that kind of thing. And so we've got to celebrate. So here's my suggestion is to create a celebration portfolio. And what you want to do is what that is 2 lists essentially. It's a list of the things that you've accomplished, the actual accomplishments. And by the way, this can be a great thing for those of you that are looking to ask for a raise or a promotion. This is a great thing to keep building on continually. And the second part of that list is something we don't think about as often, and that is our character strengths. Why do people like being around you? We often dismiss likability, warmth, and the various, maybe our humor. We dismiss that sometimes because we don't think about it as something to highlight. But when we can have a document as what I call it a celebration portfolio that outlines these 2 different things, but they're both aligned. What have I actually done? And what can I check off the box and say I've done that? And then the actual strengths. Why do people like you? What is it about you? What are your values? What is it about your values that align with certain things in the world? But most importantly, they need to align with you. So I will tell you, many years ago, I had the suggestion from somebody to create a portfolio. She didn't call it a celebration portfolio, but it was more like artists use, where you bring a portfolio to an interview to showcase your work. But what she had suggested is collecting letters and comments and things that people have said. And I started doing that. So when I went to a job interview way back now in 2006, I brought that portfolio with me. And I asked who became my boss, hey, would you like to see my portfolio? She said, well, sure. And it felt so good to have that all in one place. This can also be very helpful to build confidence because on those days when you are not feeling it, it is so helpful to have something right there near you, whether it's in a Google Doc, whether it is written on paper, something that you can reference to remind yourself, yeah, I am quite amazing. So that is number 1. Number 2, we use minimizing language. Words like, I'm sorry, I just want to talk about something. I think maybe, kinda, sorta, or things like I'm no expert, but, or how can I follow that? Well, I'm never going to be as good as that speaker that went before us. All of these things diminish our credibility. Let's dive in a little bit to each of these. Instead of your default being, I'm sorry. Now, obviously, you want to apologize when you have literally wronged someone. But remember that a lot of times we're saying I'm sorry as an automatic default. Instead of that, say excuse me or thank you for your patience. Thanks for understanding. That is a much stronger message. Be careful about words like just and little when they're not used appropriately. Obviously, they're both in the dictionary for a reason, but let's take this example. I just want to share a little tip with you. Take those out. I want to share a tip with you. Taking those two words out makes it a much stronger and more concise and powerful message. Maybe, kind of, sort of. A lot of times we say, well, I'm maybe going to do this, or I kind of have some experience doing that. No, you have experience. Avoid those words. Start noticing if you're saying any of these things. And that one, I'm no expert, but, or I'm sorry, could I ask a question? Well, you just did. Don't waste your breath saying, could I ask you a question? Just ask it. It is amazing how often this happens. And I'm going to guess if you're listening to this, you can relate. So, what you want to do instead, we've talked about saying excuse me or thank you for your patience, but sometimes it's saying nothing at all, not saying those words, pausing instead. So, start noticing if you're doing that. Number three, third way we give away our power is we doubt ourselves and we use negative self-talk. Things like, oh, I'll never be as good as that person, or oh my gosh, who am I to be asking for a promotion? And as a matter of fact, this is a really good example of what happens in the powerhouse. This group of women in my mastermind, we meet twice a month and we talk about these challenges that a lot of us have. And I am proud to say that every single person in my group has either made more money, gotten the set or gotten a promotion or changed jobs and is happier with their position now as a result of coming together. And if you're interested in that and learning more about how you can leverage your power, get a raise, get a promotion, speak in a way that you have more authority, please reach out. I would love to talk to you about it. So instead of doubting ourselves and using negative self-talk, obviously those things are going to creep in every once in a while. But here's the tip to help switch out the neural pathways in your brain. And it is this. Take the message of doubt that you typically say. So for a lot of people, it's I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. And sing it like a Broadway musical. I'm not good enough. Suddenly, you're probably going to laugh or at least chuckle a little bit when you sing it. Now, do this when it's in an appropriate spot, of course. But the idea here is that saying that same message, but in a different voice. You don't have to sing if you don't want to sing, but say it in a different voice. That changes up the message to our brain of that particular message, and it shifts it to take its power away. Now, this isn't going to just totally eliminate doubt for the rest of your life, but it is a great exercise in the moment. And what usually happens, what I have heard and what I have noticed myself, when I say that, if I do end up saying I'm not enough, I tend to laugh because I think about the time that I sang it. Now, I'm not diminishing the message. I want you to hear me on that. I am definitely not diminishing that message that we have with ourselves, but we've got to start being aware of the negative things that we're saying to ourselves. I remember being at a retreat and it was quite an interesting exercise where they first had us write down all the negative things that we say to ourselves about ourselves. Then they had us switch with another person, stand up in front of everybody, and we had to read the person's words to them. The point, although I'd say that it was a pretty harsh activity, the point of it was very memorable, that you would never say those things to another human being. So why do we say those things to ourselves? We don't have the grace for ourselves as we do for other people. So remember to have, first of all, not just noticing your negative self-talk and singing it or being more aware of it, but you also want to have positive self-talk to replace that with. Remember who you are. That is a quote that my husband said to me very recently when I was down in the doldrums. He said, remember who you are. Now, I came to find out later that that is a quote from Black Panther, but nonetheless, in that moment, either way, it doesn't matter if it's from a movie or if I heard it from my husband first. It is powerful to remember how amazing you are. Remember the power that you have. And I will say, most of my life, I spent trying to prove myself. And I'm guessing you can relate to this. People pleasing to the point where I lost myself and striving and looking to others always for approval. And I was always in this chameleon spot, like morphing to what I thought would make others happy to prove that I was enough. And I've come to realize I'm not only enough, but I'm amazing. And so are you. Remember to use those life-giving words. And you can talk about things like, I'm powerful, I'm beautiful, I'm brave, whatever it is that you would like to start feeling and experiencing. I have a client who went through a divorce, really tough divorce. And she started saying to herself in the mirror, I am beautiful every day. She said it was really awkward for about 2 weeks. Then she started getting used to it and she started actually being able to receive it. And there's something in the mirror, even when you're looking at yourself, that eye contact can be a beautiful connection with yourself and affirming who you are. And remember, it's not about your accomplishments, even though your accomplishments are great. And I'm going to guess you've got many, but it is about who you are. And a personal example I remember very specifically years ago before I was married, I remember dating my husband and coming home from a day at work and telling him all about my day. And he goes, I love that you love your job, but do you know that's not why I love you? I love you just because of who you are. No matter what you do, no matter what you did, I would still love you because of who you are. And that was a mind-blowing moment for me to realize, wow, he loves me just for me. Because I grew up in a family where your worth was based on what you produced. And I have come to realize that that is the case for many, many people. And that may be you too. So keep in mind, if you want support in a group of incredible women, consider talking to me about the Powerhouse. It is an amazing supportive community. And one of the things that I will say that has continued to, or I've continued to marvel at, is people say, well, I love your tips, Karen, but what I really love is knowing that I'm not alone and hearing the stories of other women. So consider that. I also wanted to invite you to a monthly connection call that I have that's free on Zoom. And the next one coming up is at the end of the month, October 25th at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. It is for an hour, and you're welcome to come for as little or as much as you'd like. But that is a free call coming up that focuses a lot on sharing resources, networking, but networking from the heart. It's not about, oh, what business can I get? It's about coming together as women saying, hey, how can you support me? Or how can I support you? What do I need? What do you need? And it is a beautiful time of connection. So consider that. In the meantime, let's recap 3 ways we give away our power, and most importantly, how to take it back. Number one, we downplay our strengths. Instead, create a celebration portfolio and recognize those strengths. Number two, we use minimizing language. Instead, avoid it altogether, but train yourself instead of just saying, I'm sorry, say, excuse me. And then number three, we doubt ourselves and use negative self-talk. So replace that negative self-talk with positive self-talk. But before you do that, sing that message of doubt, and that will shift the neural pathways in your brain. Until next time.